Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the very last session of this Talk Money conference. If you've made it to this stage, congratulations, not because a reflection of any way of the content, which has been amazing and so many ideas shared, but because you've made it up and down those steps so many times. Forget about financial well-being and capability. I think your personal well-being will be greatly enhanced at the end of this day. Very next up, we're very pleased to say indeed that we're now going to think a bit more about the voice of the consumer as we come to the end of the day and think about what we leave the building with. So this is our turn, yours and mine, to put the founder of Money Saving Expert, Martin Lewis, through his paces. I'd like to welcome him to the stage for our final session of the day.
I have something to admit before we start.
You're not the founder of Money Saving Expert?
I am,
okay.
And I should always put I'm the founder of the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute too, which I'm probably even more proud of. So, but no, 40 minutes ago I was in prosthetics as a 90-year-old man, and an hour before that I was dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I am still covered in glue. So if you see things flaking off me, that is the reason why. It's not a skin condition.
You're looking very well on it, I've got to say, for a 90-year-old man.
I think when they scrub your face really hard to get stuff off, you've got a glow afterwards.
Yes, I mean, I'm guessing this means you've got part in the next Star Wars movie. But
No, it's my series. We do the break bumps in the middle to try and keep it entertaining and try and, it's probably fitting for this.
Yeah.
When I started my career, obviously, my broadcast career about money, and different to what you do, this is outside the ghetto of news, if you like, where people will watch serious information. I had to acknowledge and accept that most people find what I do boring. Money is a boring subject. And so actually, people always say, why do you talk so fast? Well, if I don't have a zhuzhuzhum, if I don't have an excitement, if I don't have a frisson, if I don't look like I'm engaged and think this is important, well, the viewer won't, and they won't engage either. My trick on Good Morning Britain is always, when I come to the last item, I speed up, and then everyone complains, you haven't given him enough time. I might not have had anything else to say, but I speed up. And you've got to do that. So we have to accept, to make people engage, there are those who will and those who won't. If you want to make the ones who won't engage, you have to make it exciting, a game, interesting, and make sure they can see you're passionate about it too.
And there's no doubt you're passionate about it, Martin, which brings us to your pet hates when it comes to financial capability. Including the fact that we always say we're no good at maths. And is that a British thing, or frankly, is that just a thing?
I think what bothers me is the boasting that I'm no good at maths. I'm terrible at maths. And I find it peculiar. Have you ever heard anyone go really awful at reading? But for some reason, it's socially acceptable to say it at maths. And I think we have to change that culture in society. Now, that isn't to berate anyone with dyscalculia or anyone who struggles with numeracy in any way. That's to say it is not something to be proud of that you are bad at maths. And one of the things that we look at is we look at children when their parents are bad at maths and boast they're bad at maths, we actually permit them not to try at mathematics. Now, most people, with the exception of some with dyscalculia or mental capacity issues, are capable of good financial numeracy if they do the work at it, but people don't do so. So I'm involved in the National Numeracy Campaign, which is very important, and it is at the core of much financial well-being. There's a lot you can do with attitudes to money that aren't mathematical, but there's a lot about money that is mathematical. So I actually have a real problem with the boast that I'm not good at maths. It's similar to people come up to me and go, I'm terrible with money, you can't help me. No, it's the people who are really good with money I can't help. If you're terrible with money, you're a piece of piss, frankly. Just show me your finances, it'll take me 5 minutes and I'll sort it out. But it's the concept in this country. We're here about Talk Money. It's that concept that, it's fine to be crap with cash. It's fine to be crap with maths. And we are obligated, and this is why this conference and doing this is so important, we have to change that mentality. We don't want to add a stigma to people who are bad, but I do want to stigmatize people who think it's good to be bad with money. So there's a subtle nuance there.
And I mean, that's not the. I mean, you know, this one was actually termed as being the upbeat, positive note to end the conference on. But actually, let's have a bit more of a moan as well. What are your other pet moans when it comes to this area?
Well, one of my fun ones will just go, it's a nice one, and it's not really relevant, but I have to do it because it's perhaps the thing that makes me throw my sock at the television more than anything else, is somebody, well, apart from the use of the word myself in The Apprentice, if you ever watch that, is 110% effort.
So you do watch The Apprentice a lot?
I do watch
Yes.
The Apprentice because it's great to moan about. 110% effort. That is absolutely the most mathematically ignorant possible phrase. Now, the problem with 110% effort is this. The maximum effort you can give is 100%. If you're giving more effort than was ever possible for you before, you are still giving 100% effort, but your prior effort is now 90% of what your current effort is, but you are not giving over 100% effort. If we breach the 100% effort threshold, then we have inflation on it. So 110%, if you're breaching 100%, isn't good. There was a man recently in America, a congressman, who said, I am 2,000% behind Donald Trump. Well, if you're 2,000%, why aren't you 10,000%? If you're 10,000%, why aren't you 1,000,000%? If you're 1,000,000%, why aren't you a Googleplex percent? And it's that acceptance of this mathematical illiteracy. It's acceptance, and I know it's hyperbole, and I know it's just a little bit of expansion, but you cannot be 110%, give 110% effort. Before anyone says it, yes, you can improve by 110%. You can have a change of 110%, but you cannot give more than maximum capacity. So what we all must do is vow now, from now on, to always give 100% and no more.
I know you've got a couple of others as well. The market assuming that people are stupid. I mean, do companies?
I'm not sure. I'm not.
Think people are stupid.
It's not the markets, actually. I think this stems from quite a serious point. In the campaign to help people reclaim payment protection insurance, of course, one of the biggest systemic frauds this country's ever seen, £30 billion has been repaid. People were missold as a matter of course, as a matter of script, as a matter of diktat by the banks, and yet I've not seen anybody prosecuted for it. How does it happen? £30 billion stolen off consumers, more than £30 billion, and no one's been prosecuted for it. But what gets me about this is the number of times that people get in touch with me, still now, and say, why are you helping all those stupid people who got PPI? Why are you helping the stupid people? And I once wrote a charter for stupid people's rights, because I think it's important to examine what that means and that philosophy about stupidity. So let me define some stupid people for you. Well, we'll start with anyone who's visually impaired and who might not have been able to read a website when they were ticking a box because their screen reader, well, they're stupid because they got PPI. Anyone with a mental health issue or a mental capacity issue clearly must be stupid because they have problems with money. Anyone who's sleep deprived and may have had a new child and not read something, or stupid. Anyone who trusted their bank or their financial institution and listened to what they said, stupid. Anyone who trusted the regulator who allowed these huge institutions to run roughshod over what they did, stupid, stupid, stupid. Now, of course, I don't believe any of those people are really stupid. But let's just imagine something for a second. Let's get rid of all the worthy stupids that I've just mentioned. And let's just leave ourselves with those people who aren't that bright and have made mistakes because they aren't that bright. The classical definition of stupidity. Personally, I'm delighted to help those people. They're the people I want to help. The economists who are brilliant, who make mistakes, well, maybe you're on your own. But
Thanks,
but do you know that this, I'm sorry to go, and I know I do talk, but there's a really interesting thing going at the moment. Citizens Advice, some of you will know, have put in a super complaint about the loyalty penalty. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, because of course Money Saving Expert made its name from churning people from product to product, saying be disloyal and move. And we have a price gap in energy, which is also relevant. And where I've come down to on this, ultimately, is we have a problem in our marketplace. If we take energy as a nice, easy example, There are two ways to run an energy market. You either do price regulation, where you tell companies what price they can pay, or you have competition. We've gone for a competition model. To make a competition model work, you need price differentiation. And the bigger the price differentiation, the more effective the competition, because the more you are incentivized in order to switch. So when we cap prices, but say we want a competitive market, you've effectively got an ineffective halfway house. If you want to do that, then regulate prices, regulate all prices, or stick with competition. And my problem with the price cap, and where I've been coming out on this, is we have to define who is an acceptable victim of competition and who is an unacceptable victim of competition. If you or I, as savvy, financially literate people, choose not to switch our gas and electricity providers and therefore end up paying £200 or £300 more, then that's not a loyalty penalty, that's an apathy penalty. But the fact that a struggling 90-year-old grandma or grandpa pays more to boil a kettle than I do is a national disgrace. And they are the unacceptable victims of competition. And working with Helen and the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute, this is actually an underlying difficulty we face. If we want competition, there are people who can engage in it, and then I enjoy complexity and I want complex products because they tend to be good products. But there's also a chunk of people who can't engage and need protected and need simple products. And what we try and do is one size fits all, and that doesn't work for me.
And do you think, I mean, you mentioned there money and mental health, and we know now, thanks to people like you, that there is an incredible link between the two. Do you think policymakers get that and are in the right frame of mind to address that?
I think they're starting to now, but it isn't just policymakers. I mean, that stat is quite simple. If you have a mental health condition, you are 4 times more likely to be in crisis debt than everybody else. If you have clinical depression, and this stat isn't firm, so it's a loose stat, your treatment time is 18 months longer if you've also got a financial problem. It is a marriage made in hell. Policymakers are starting to understand the problem, but not necessarily the solution. There are many things that we're looking at, such as, until recently, the NHS, when it did your mental health assessment, asked you about your marital situation. It didn't ask about your financial situation. And yet it's a core driver of mental health problems. And funnily enough, over 60%, is it 60%, Helen, of people who are in the mental health professions, psychiatrists and psychologists, are spending their time filling in money help forms for their clients. Well, you know what? I'm sorry to any debt counsellors in the room, but debt counsellors are cheaper than psychiatrists. And we're paying psychiatrists to do the debt counsellors' jobs, and they're not as good at it. So I think policymakers are starting to see the problems, but we haven't got the joined-up solutions yet, which is why we have Money and Mental Health to try and write those very clever policy papers that I could never have written myself, to try and change that. I'm delighted to say we are at the middle of the beginning of that.
Which is a good place to be.
We used to be nowhere, and then we had the beginning, and now we're at the middle of the beginning. But we're nowhere close to where we should be in 10 years. In 10 years' time, I dream of a situation where you speak to your financial institution, you tell them, by the way, I've got a mental health condition, and they say, certainly, which of our control options would you like? I want mental health to be boring and normal, because it affects more people have mental health problems than get pregnant, but we're happy to think about maternity leave and how pregnancy works, but we haven't ever thought about mental health. And I think we want to normalise it, but that's not to say we shouldn't care about it. That's to say we have to accept that 1 in 4 people will go through it each year, and we have to look after them.
Absolutely. And, and like talking about money, it should be one of those things that we need to get past that hurdle. We've got so little time. I want to talk to you as well about one of your most recent moves, which is the financial textbook for secondary schools, which, teachers are going, yes, fantastic resources. Some professionals, when you talk to them, say, hang on a minute, ultimately, this is another commercial company getting involved in this arena. Is it any different from banks being involved?
Who's the commercial company?
Yeah, I'll tell you, money-saving expert. I mean, ultimately,
money-saving experts aren't involved in any way.
But you're behind this. And
it's a personal donation from me, paid to Young Money, a regulated charity and used to be PFEG, who do the expertise on it, with no editorial control by me, which I dictated in contract, so nobody could ask me that question.
Good that we cleared it up then.
So I fed into it without any editorial control or stance whatsoever, written totally independently by them. I just put my hand in my pocket. This is not, it has no branding of Money Saving Expert in any way, because I've always campaigned against branding in schools. I've written the foreword in there as I was asked to do so. It is not a sell document in any way. It is not the book I would have written for schools because it's mapped to the national curriculum. I do appreciate you raising it, but your question was nonsense.
Charming. Well, perhaps this one isn't nonsense. I mean, this is something I was repeating to you because other people have raised it, so it's good that you cleared it up, frankly. But you're a father, aren't you?
Yes.
And this is a book aimed at secondary school children. One of the conversations we've been having today is, frankly, that's too late. We need to start getting to kids earlier, don't we?
It is. It is too late. And we do need to teach children earlier. But I think we have to understand where we are in the landscape. Ultimately, if you want to teach children, schools are the best place to do it. They've got the resources to do it, they have teaching professionals, and children are learning professionals. We spent 3 years lobbying to get financial education on the national curriculum. We got it on in 2014. I said at the time, that's the thing I'd like on my gravestone, because that, I think, is the biggest thing I've ever done. And I was wrong, because it was a Pyrrhic victory. Because no resources were put into it. The government put no resources, no teacher training, no ongoing teacher training, no materials. Many of the banks who were funding it before pulled out, saying it was now on the curriculum. So we're set in a lacuna where, in fact, arguably it was always potentially damaging. Teachers then complained, we can't teach it, but we've got to teach it. Ofsted didn't know how to examine it because nobody was teaching it. And that's why we've done the textbooks. We went to the government and said, what can we do to push it? And they said, we need a textbook. I said, great. They said, oh no, we need a textbook. We're not paying for it. And I went out and said, it's outrageous that a private individual should pay for it. It's on the curriculum. We do not ask GlaxoSmithKline to pay for chemistry textbooks. Why the hell are you saying somebody else has to pay for this textbook? But then I went out and thought, forget your principles. Pragmatics will overcome, and I'll pay for it, but in the right way, to a donation to a charity and not doing it through myself. So we started there. If you made me choose between senior schools at 15 with the level of complexity and primary schools, and I could only have one, I do think we have it in the right place. But I don't want to choose, because I believe this should be ongoing development like all subjects. And many schools, to be fair, primary schools actually do often talk about money, and there are good resources out there. But of course it should be on the national curriculum. But you know the problem with the national curriculum? The academisation of schools means less than 50% of schools now follow the national curriculum. So getting it on the national curriculum doesn't mean schools will teach it. Our next campaign with the textbook is to try and get parents to talk to their schools and say, will you teach it? Because you're an academy. You can do what the hell you like. So you're right, it would be wonderful to have it in primary schools, and we should all lobby that. But you can only turn one page at a time. You
can indeed. And as I say, so much I want to talk to you about, Martin, but the clock is against us. I want to give other people in the audience a chance to be told that their questions are rubbish too. So
I will.
So if anyone's got a question, I'd like to keep it to questions, please, rather than statements, because the clock's against us. Frankly, the next thing after that is going to be a drinks event, so you don't want everybody else hating you because, you know, you've taken too long. So if you've got a question, please do raise your hand, and remind us where you're from and your name, please, as well. We've got some microphones. There's a question down here. Sorry, the lights are quite bright, so do forgive me for slow seeing you. Microphone, maybe.
Hi, we've heard a lot today about open banking, and in some respects it feels like the devil's own work, and on the other hand it's a panacea to all sorts of problems. What's your view? What are you excited about that you're seeing, and what are you concerned about?
Open banking and its predecessor, which was looked at when we were going to have, I forgot what the word name was, when we were going to have, you know, access to our data, is a great concept that could do a lot of good, but there's no take-up to any real extent. And there's a great amount of fear, and it's cumbersome in the way that it works at the moment. And we're going to have to overcome that. But, you know, I do believe there is a potential for open banking to, first of all, break the monopolies of the credit reference agencies. Sorry, James, wherever you are, which I think is important. To have real why do you need, you know, if you can actually see what people are spending money on, that is the best way of assessing how their finances are than anything that we've had before, even though it doesn't necessarily go back long enough. But also, and open banking is a feed-in rather than a contributor of this. The next stage of consumer web, if you like. So probably I would say consumer web 1.0 was something like Money Saving Expert, putting all the information out there in an unbiased way with a public service remit, which is, these days enshrined legally in the way Money Saving Expert operates. Before it became part of the Money Supermarket Group, it was enshrined by me, and that was how I dictated it. But now it's a legal contract that it must be operated always in the best interests of users ahead of any financial considerations. And I think Money Saving Expert was one of those consumer webs 1.0. I think consumer web 2.0 was something, and if you give me using parochial examples that are my own, was something like our Energy Club, where we take your details, we know what you're doing, and then we tell you when you need to act again. And consumer web 3.0, which is where we're going to start to head now, us and many others, is actually license for somebody else to do stuff for you. So you will say, and we'll take energy, but it could be banking, it could be credit cards. Here are my finances. I am giving you, as a trusted agency or intermediary, permission to do it for me. When I need a new credit card, you will do that for me. When I need to switch energy, you will do that for me. And I actually think open banking will make that a lot easier and feed into it. But we don't have regulation yet that's going to not just, and this isn't just, it's important for me, money isn't just financial services. Money is gas and electricity and water bills and your shopping at Asda. All of that's money. And we don't yet have the regulatory strength across the board to enable that to happen. But I think in 10 years you will have trusted agencies doing a lot of people's finances. What we have to do within that is make sure people don't abrogate responsibility. Someone does it for them, but they still understand the choices that are being made. And I think that will be the wrestle of the next decade.
Thank you. I could see another hand where there's one there. Let's see if I'm missing on the side.
Thank you, Juliette Collier, Campaign for Learning. We've been doing work that's intergenerational with parents, and we belong to lots of parent forums and groups and work with other organisations that focus on parents. And I'm quite interested to know what you're already doing to make the parents the catalyst for schools actually delivering work, because anything we can do to help, we would.
Well, I mean, I should say that it's Young Money who are coordinating the action that we're doing. Financial education has always been sort of a triumvirate campaign between the all-party parliamentary group, which effectively gave us the lobbying and the politics, Young Money who gave us the professional expertise in education, and myself, a Money Saving Expert, who gave the reach, or the big gob, if you like, to how it works. What we're doing at the moment is it's very simple, letting parents know that this exists, but that their children may not be taught it. And I think that's all we can do, because we are about, I'm a broadcaster, I'm about broad reach, not targeted individual reach. So starting to get that message out there. But when I look at the number of downloads from parents of the textbook who want to read it and want to talk to their children and want to understand it, I hope it will be a step change in how financial education works. We are seeing incredible pickup already, but nothing in the sense that you're asking. I can't give you anything tangible, because that's not the way I operate.
Just feed.
I'm wondering if you're working with organisations like School Home Support and Parent Kind, that, those kinds of organisations that have that existing relationship. But I'll talk to them about it.
But we also lobbying, we're looking at teaching unions and head teachers as well to do the lobbying in that direction. So anything anybody in the room can do, and it doesn't have to be our resource. This isn't trying to rent seek. Any resource to make sure that every child in this country, regardless of their background, is engaged and equipped to live in this one of the world's most competitive consumer economies, I would applaud. And it is about all of us doing it together. And we made a bit, if you look at the back of the teaching book, because there's a teacher's guide on the financial education textbook, you'll see it's not just Young Money. There are 5 or 6 other financial education providers listed at the back, because what we wanted to be is engaging and collegiate, not competitive, trying to squeeze anybody else out.
Okay, I think we've got time for a question down here and this gentleman here after that. In fact, we take 2 questions at once, then we can get them answered, and then those are our last 2, I'm afraid. We're out.
David Alexander from MyDex CIC. Is there a thing you're thinking about that you haven't done anything about yet?
Yeah, more sleep.
More sleep.
I didn't actually sleep last night because I scratched my eye at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I was in A&E all night. And I've been filming all day.
And
so
you've been covered in glue.
It's very much, and it's probably why I said your question was rubbish. More sleep is never so good.
I'll forgive you.
Look, there's a great frustration for me. I need to be careful how I answer this. There's lots of things that I'm working on, but there's a great frustration for me about two things. And one of them isn't necessarily money, but it fits into the other. One is I genuinely get upset about the reputation of our political classes, which I think is bad for democracy and bad for change. And I think that we need to do something about that, but people who are outside of our political classes need to do it because politicians can't do it themselves. I think it's bad for our democracy. But fitting in with that, I am always, not everybody, you had John Glenn here before, who I think is actually a politician who understands his brief. But you'd be staggered how many politicians I meet who genuinely don't understand their brief in the money and consumer world. I mean, literally don't understand their brief. On student finance, some of the questions I get from policymakers are just totally ignorant. I mean, I've seen energy select committees, then they say to people, but why are you trying to get so much data when people switch energy? Why do you need their postcode? Because it's bloody regional. You need to know where people live or you can't do a comparison. I mean, the questions are just incredibly ignorant. And as I talked about before with energy, some of the solutions are incredibly ignorant. So I think one of the things that we need to do is make sure that if we're going to have people who are making political decisions, that they actually have to understand what they're doing. I don't know quite how we fix that yet, but I'm 46, so I've got 19 years left before I retire. I've made as much money as anybody could ever dream of, and far more than I ever wanted. I only get out of bed for things that I believe in because I have nothing else to drive me, which is the greatest luxury of wealth in the world, I can tell you. I don't have a car, so I don't have a fast car. I don't buy expensive things, but I choose why I get out of bed in the morning, and that is the definition of success to me, and something I'm very proud of. So I've got 19 years left, and my eye does twinkle about that, but I don't yet know what to do.
And if you take this question here, please.
Yeah, James from Experience. So, Martin, what's your biggest financial mistake?
It's getting his own back on you, isn't it, for that?
That really is a difficult question.
Have you ever made any financial mistakes?
Yes, of course I have. Of course I have. I'll fill for a second when I think of the answer. The funniest thing is when I sold Money Saving Expert and the numbers were in the paper and they were large, everyone said, what are you going to buy? What are you going to buy? And I was like, I don't want to buy anything. It's just not how I operate. But so I bought two things. I can't think of anything, and I have made lots of financial mistakes, but they're not coming at the moment, so I'll give you something else that's an entertaining answer. So the two things I bought, are you ready? Both bought on eBay, both cost less than £100. Number one, I bought myself a Van de Graaff generator. I'd always wanted, if you remember Van de Graaff generator, static electricity makes your hair go on end. I'd always wanted a Van de Graaff generator, and I wanted my definition of things I had to buy is they had to be of no practical use in any way, shape or form. They had to be impulse-based, silly purchases. And number two, I bought a theremin. Does anyone know what a theremin is? There you go. So a theremin it's an aerial mast on a plate, and where you put your hands on it dictates the sound. And Star Trek was played on a theremin. I'm no good at music. I'm absolutely useless with it, but I thought I would get that. I think I'm giving a lot away about my nerdiness, aren't I? So I bought myself my two most extravagant purchases, because they were for no purpose and no need ever, have been a theremin and a Van de Graaff generator.
Martin, in an earlier session we were hearing about how in soap operas, when you have a certain theme, you see peaks in demand for various products. There you go. You've just created your very own money spending tips, a Van de Graaff generator and a theremin. I don't know where we go from there, so I'm just going to have to say thank you very much indeed, Martin Lewis. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm sorry we didn't have longer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I've been rude.
Okay, thank you so very much. It just falls to me now to call Sarah Pereira up to the stage from the Money Advice Service to give us her thoughts on what's been an incredibly stimulating, busy day with lots of ideas to take forward, which we know we're going to inform the strategy going forward. So Sarah, please do come up. It has been incredible. We've had so many breakout sessions, so many ideas, so much buzz on social media over the course of the day and over the course of the week. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. So it hadn't quite occurred to me when I took this slot that I would be following the hugely high energy levels of Martin Lewis. So there's been a bit of banter on the WhatsApp group we've got for the team that are organising this today, and apparently I need to put in a 10,000% improvement, and it will take me 110% effort to do so. Is that right? Oh no, I didn't get it right. Wow, I've just received a death stare from Martin Lewis. This is potentially a career high. So last time I was in this room, I was actually 16 years old, and I had come to hear Tony Benn speak. Shortly after that, I did an A-level in politics and then a degree in politics, and then after that I went for an interview, and someone said to me, I think you should focus on politics with a small p, which I took as a bit of a crushing blow at the time, but I have pondered that statement over the years. The term can mean many things to many people, but to me it really does mean putting a career in on focusing on people, and that's about joining people together to change society for the better. And the National Strategy for Financial Capability is about just that. It's about collective impact, it's about recognising that we all need to join together to solve the issues of the day. And today we've heard from government, from financial services, from fintechs, from charities and funders, from people working on the front line, and also we've heard from customers. And customers is what this is all about. And those of you that know me will know that I often recount stories of the customers that I have met on my 8 years focusing on financial capability. So I'm going to tell you a couple of those stories now. One of those is somebody I met really recently, and it was actually someone that John Glenn referenced in his speech earlier, because I went with John Glenn that day. And that was a lady called Yvonne who was being helped by Maternity Matters in Glasgow. And Yvonne was pregnant with her 5th child, and her previous 4 children had been taken into care through a mixture of the addiction issues that she had suffered. She was completely alienated from her family, and she had also been in quite abusive and also financially abusive relationships. And her interaction with this financial capability intervention meant that she was bounding with enthusiasm about the fact that social services were saying to her that she would be able to keep the child that she was pregnant with. I talked about Yvonne last week actually at another event, but since then she's successfully delivered her baby and is happily living with her baby, financially secure. Another story is actually someone that I've followed the journey of since 2013, and that was a boy I met called Martin when I used to run a program called Money for Life, which I set up in 2010. And Martin has autism and anxiety. He lived at home with his mum. He was attending a sixth form college. He found it difficult to even go there, and he'd been horribly bullied as a child. And he got involved in the Money for Life project, and he set up a credit union within his college. Martin contacted me about a year ago and tagged me in a tweet, actually, because there was a little story about him going to be on ITV, and he and I exchanged the messages. And actually, when I told him I was going to speak today, I said, Martin, can I use your story in what I'm going to say today? And he sent me this quote back. Learning these skills set off a fire within me and gave me an enormous amount of confidence. They've been a foundation which I've built upon to become independent and to be confident and to live my life to the full and to become an adult. And Martin told me that since we met in 2013, he went on to do a degree. He became a volunteer. He got a job at Coventry University. He's just got engaged and he's about to move out from home and leave his mum, who I've met as well, who I'm sure he was saying to give his mum a break, but I know that she'll be devastated to lose him. But Martin, to me, represents how financial capability can set somebody off on an entirely fulfilling life that they weren't even expecting to have. So when Hector launched the calls to action earlier, of course, people like Yvonne and Martin sit behind those stories. If we can help them as young people, if we can make it easy for them to save, if we can help them, if we can ensure that there are credit products that are appropriate for them and we can help them use them responsibly, we can help them think about savings and retirement throughout their lives, and if they get into debt, that we can help them through that journey too. And we hope that all of you will join together to put your collective ideas and experience together to move the dials on these calls to action. And you may have noticed, the astute amongst you, the entire sessions today were structured around the 5 calls to action. And the morning was about unpicking the issues, and the afternoon was about focusing on solutions. And I'm hugely optimistic about what we can achieve together. And the idea of these calls to action is in the name. They're about action. They're not about endlessly talking. They're about actually moving the dials and action. And you heard John Glenn talking about some of the things he put into the budget recently, so interest-free loans and breathing space. And I know that some of you in the room are the people that brought those ideas to John Glenn, that you've been influential in getting those things in the budget. You've also heard from many of the speakers about the impact of visiting projects and hearing stories of customers firsthand. And again, that's something I would all encourage you to do. Visit each other's projects, learn about different sectors that you're not directly engaged with, because that will spark ideas about what solutions might be. You heard from Martin earlier, he's launched his textbook. He has given up years and all of that energy, which I'm not going to quote the percentage of, to try and help financial education, and he is looking to you too to help him do that. And in some of the sessions today, I chaired a session earlier on credit, and we heard from Sian Williams as an example, who is taking that interest-free loan idea that's in the budget, and she needs help to work out the eligibility, how it will work, how we're going to reach the people it serves. That's about action. Sian is looking for solutions, and we've heard from lots of people like that today. Another example is the debt target operating model, a session that some of you joined just now. Again, this is about creating a new system, and you are the people in the room that can make that success. So I encourage you to continue to connect and share ideas with each other, and meet the people that sit behind the statistics. And let this be the start of something this week. Let's continue to talk money with each other, and continue to collaborate. So our challenge now, I think, is to scale up and make our impact even bigger, because we already know what works. We just need to make it bigger and fine-tune it and take it out to reach some of the targets outlined in the calls to action. So finally, I have to say thank you to all the people that have made this entire week, not just the day, possible. And it's not over yet. We still have 2 more days. I'm going to Wales tomorrow, and a number of my colleagues are going to Scotland and Northern Ireland on Friday for further conferences of this nature. So in terms of thank yous, I really should have got a glass of water close by. I'd like to say thank you to Darshini. We were delighted. We were kind of air punching in the team when Darshini accepted our invitation to come and join us. And likewise, Martin, there was a little bit of air punching there as well when Martin agreed to join us. And I'd also like to thank all of our speakers. I just saw a tweet actually saying this was the best ever Maz and Mel conference. And that is because of the quality and the unbelievable expertise of the speakers that we've had today and the panelists as well. There's also obviously a team that sits behind this. So from Maz and Melg, there's been a huge amount of effort put in by lots of people across our organisations to make this a success. And finally, all of you. As I mentioned, this is about collective impact. No one organisation can do this by themselves. We all need each other. And I'd like to all, as well as giving a thank you and round of applause to everyone else I've just mentioned, please give yourselves a round of applause as well. Thank you.
To echo all of Sarah's thanks there, and just to say, if you're thinking of a practical way to put those calls of action into practice right now, right here, please do join us downstairs where there'll be drinks, actually hosted by Malg, for the next half an hour or so. Thank you so much. Thank you.